Hello and welcome and good morning for you all. It looks a bit rainy and gray here in Turku, where I'm located, but also that the spring is coming soon. I hope that everyone has coffees ready and you are ready to listen compact information of the event data protection. First, I will go through some practical information of this webinar. We will spend about 30 minutes of your time. You can send questions to the chat during the whole presentation. My colleague Antonia is there to moderate this webinar, but there is time in the end so I can look the questions and answer to those. This webinar has aroused interest, which is great to see that people are still interested of the data protection. This is actually first time we are having this in English, but we have had 3 ones in Finnish earlier. The importance of the data protection is not going anywhere because the importance of data is just growing. I think that data protection can sometimes feel complicated, and I hope that this webinar can provide you clear information of this topic. First, couple words of me so that you know who is talking here. So my name is Tuuli Halsvaha and I work as a legal counsel and DPO at Lyyti. I have been working here the last 5 years and data protection has been on my table ever since. I have also completed data protection related certifications, SIP-E and SIP-M, if you are familiar to these. I assume that you are familiar with Lyyti, but I will still say a couple of words what we do and why it makes this topic even more important. So Lyyti is an event management software. We operate mostly in Europe, and through our system goes yearly more than 25 million attendees and their personal information, of course. That means that we have a great responsibility as the data processors, but also to help our customers who are data controllers to control the data and manage it. We will start with a question. I will post it from here. So, is data protection part of your event planning process? Yes. There is 100% of yes at the moment. That is good to know that you are already doing these things. Why event data protection is important? So events are made for people and personal information is needed to organize events. Sometimes sensitive information is also needed. For example, the special diet, health information, if food is served in the event. Sharing data may also be needed for third parties or internally for a bigger group of people who are organizing the event and taking people in. And what happens to the data after the event? Events are organized for different reasons. Sometimes the information is needed only for the specific event, and sometimes it is also needed for marketing or sales. Couple words of the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. Application of the GDPR started about 5 years ago in the spring. And we have come forward in the public discussion. Anymore, news are not full of data protection fines and should you use consent every time. However, there are still some problems because we don't have much concrete examples. One question has been the data transfers to the third countries, such as United States. And is it acceptable to use the systems that transfer data? So we are still waiting for those practical solutions and cases that could help us further. As I said, data protection regulation can feel complicated, and we are still waiting for those practical solutions. However, the problems related to the data protection are usually related to the basic principles of the GDPR. Couple of examples of the common problems we have. For example, the privacy policy or notice does not give enough information from the regulation point of view, or it is not clear enough as it should be. Or the basis to process data is wrongly chosen. For example, the consent is not used when it should be. The goal of this event is that everyone learns at least one new thing or gets a new thought regarding event data protection. We have people from different backgrounds attending to this webinar, and we will go through the very basics related to the event data protection. Even that, I believe that everyone can find from this webinar something new, or at least get some new thought of this topic. So let's get to it. We will go through the data protection details regarding events in 3 parts: before event, during, and after. Let's start what you need to consider from the data protection perspective while planning an event. First step is attendees. Who are invited or coming to the event? Before the event, you should define what attendee groups are coming or a target group of this specific event. This is important that depending on the attendees, the interest to process the personal data may differ. For example, comparing employees and customers or prospects. So we have different interest to process employees' personal data than customers. Second step is to decide what information is needed. What information is needed to organize this event? Personal information shouldn't be collected if it's not necessary for the purpose. For example, if you are going to serve food in the event, you should ask about special diets. Otherwise, you don't need to ask about it. Third step is to define the legal base to process information. According to the GDPR, there needs to be a legal base to process personal information. And with this question, there is no shortcuts. Events are organized for different needs and different grounds. And that means that all of these bases can be in question. To define what is the right legal base for your event, you need to think about the whole event. What kind of group of attendees is coming? What information is needed? And what is the intended use for the personal information? For example, do you need information only to organize this event or also to something else, like sales and marketing? Consent is one of the most significant legal bases to process information. And it has an important role. For example, when information is used for marketing purposes after the event. However, consent should not be used just to make sure if some other option would be more suitable for the event. Next step is privacy policy or notice. Privacy policy or notice is an information tool for attendees to tell about how we are going to process their personal information which has been collected. It is important that privacy policy is understandable and attendees can get a clear picture of the processing of their information. So that means that privacy policy is not written for lawyers. It should at least include who is responsible for the information, what is basis to process that information, how long the information is stored, rights of the attendees, and possible risks related to the processing. Third parties. In the event, there may be different needs for sharing data. In this part, we will go through sharing data to third parties for commercial reasons like sales and marketing. If data is shared for commercial reasons, the attendees should give their consent for this sharing. It can be done in the registration page, where it is also possible to link the third-party privacy policy on the page that attendees get enough information of what sharing their information means. There's also some data protection questions in during event phase, and we will go to that. So back to the sharing of information. Like I said before, in events, there may be different needs to share data. And we will continue with sharing information, and this means other than commercial reasons. For example, these third parties are part of the organizing group. For example, the restaurant who serves food in the event, or Lyyti, who is the event management system of the event. So third party can be a data processor if the data is controlled, processed on behalf of the controller. If the third party is data processor, there should be an agreement made between the parties about the data processing. For example, Lyyti is data processor when it comes to attendee data of the customers, and Lyyti and the customers have agreement of the data processing. So data processors do not process personal information for their own needs and reasons. For example, the restaurant processes special diet information only for the need of that event. For this kind of processing, you don't need to ask a separate consent from the attendees, because sharing data is needed to organize the event. Information can be shared also to other than third parties, like in bigger group internally who are organizing event and, for example, receiving people to there. In that case also, the information should be shared controlled and, for example, avoid printing out attendee lists. Then next step, pictures. Taking pictures can be one question than many things before the event. From the picture, it is possible to recognize person, and in that sense, it is also personal information. And data protection regulation applies to that. In principle, it is possible to take general pictures in the open space without the attendees have given their consent for that. This means in practice that individual people are not center of those pictures, and the pictures are more like from the general feeling. If you, however, want to take pictures of individual people and also use these pictures, for example, in marketing, you need to ask permission to that. Collecting this kind of permission can be organized in different ways. And one option is to ask about it on the registration page, which also means that you need to somehow recognize the people who have not given their permission. Some kind of separate filming wall is also one possible option to organize this, because their giving consent is more clear. Then we will go to the after event time. There is still a couple of questions to think. First, deleting or anonymizing data. Deleting information or possibly anonymization is important detail, which I think is easily left out after the event. Storage period of the data is already defined in the privacy policy, which has been set before the event. And I don't recommend that all the data should be deleted right after the event. But usually at least some of that data is not needed anymore. For example, that special diet information. Notice also that it is not possible to change the storage period, which has been defined in the privacy policy after the event and after the attendees have accepted the privacy policy. And the data cannot be used for the purpose which has not been specified in the privacy policy. And last step is the rights of the attendees. Actually, this does not belong only to the after event time. And these rights can come to question in any time after the attendee has given their personal information. Data protection regulation gives certain rights to people whose data is processed. Maybe one of the most important rights is to have right to have access to the information. In practice, this means that attendee can ask what data you hold from them, and you need to give answer to that in 30 days. Also, right to correct or delete information can be in question regarding events. So, takeaways from this webinar. This really is a simple. Focusing on basics, you can improve your event data protection in practice. And when you have a good model for your event, you can use those same principles also in the following events. How Lyyti can help you. We have different tools for these things. For example, privacy policy to registration form, consent or legitimate interest, compliance center, where you can find the attendees and see all the data you hold from them from different events. And of course, anonymization tools where you can set that one specific data is anonymized always after the event. If you want to know more of these tools and how to get it in use, you can contact sales or support. And then to the questions. You can write if you have any questions to the chat. I have a couple of questions asked before, so I will answer these first. First one is processing of special category of data, for example, health-related information. Since their data needs more protection, I wonder what I need to consider. Processing special category data is prohibited in general, but of course, that we are able to organize events, it is sometimes needed. First, I would consider, do I need to ask consent for asking that specific information? I mean that sometimes you may have some other base to process attendees' information, but the consent is needed only for that specific information. And other thing to consider is that anonymize or delete that data as soon as possible after the event. That's how you can limit the time you are processing that information. Second question was, can I hand over attendee list to sponsors? And if yes, what information? Yes, it is possible to hand over attendee list to sponsors. There comes that commercial reasons to share data. But I would ask a consent or permission to that on the registration form, and also link the sponsor's privacy policy on that page. Then it is very clear for the attendee that their data is going to be handed over to the third party. And third question was what I should notice if webinar is recorded and delivered after the event. Well, I think this depends on what group it is delivered. If the recording is sent only to those who have registered to the event, there's not much to consider. If it's like limited group, if you want to share that recording, for example, in the website, it would be good to notice that recording is limited to the presenter and the presentation. For example, then you wouldn't see the chat or the other attendees. And then I will look to chat if there is any questions. Yes, so can I send event invitation to leads that I don't have in my CRM yet and haven't signed up for information from my company from a GDPR perspective? This is good, really good questions, and I think it depends on do you have like consumers or do you work with companies, because there are different rules for those. I think for companies it is possible to send that kind of event invitations, but for consumers it's more limited. I hope that that helps. If there is no other questions, we still have some time, but if there is not coming any more, check, yes. Follow-up question, if the emails are available in the internet, is it okay then? Well, I would say usually if it's available in the internet, it's usually okay. There's still like limitations when it comes to consumer business. In the B2B business, it's more free. Yes. So if not any more questions, you can of course contact me directly with email or in the LinkedIn after this webinar. Thank you for your time. You will receive right after the event the EVS feedback, where you can tell, was this event worth of your time, and give your thoughts or give us a tip what event we should organize next. So, thank you very much for attending this. Thank you.